Everyone, and I want to take this moment to welcome you to a very special episode of Newsflash. And on today's show, I want to do a little bit of an introduction. My name is Spencer Walsh. I am the host of Newsflash, which is normally a broader global politics podcast, and the host of the Spencer Walsh Radio Network, which has many other podcasts about a variety of different topics. But today, I'm using Newsflash to produce a podcast specifically for the Tufts community, and it's about the Ultra Union. The Ultra Union is the union of Tufts Resident Assistants, or RAs. They are having an upcoming union election this Wednesday, December the 14th. That's going to be tomorrow as the time of this publishing or air date, so to speak. So I thought I'd sit down with two of the organizers today, Julie Francois and David Whittingham, to talk a lot about, how and why they organized this union, what some of their struggles are, how they did what they did, and what's next for them. And hello, everyone. So we are here today with a very exciting set of two wonderful guests. Joining us today is Julie Francois and David Whittingham. Would you guys, I want to get this definitely the most accurate possible. Would you guys say that you guys are the leaders of the Tufts RA Union, or how would you characterize it?
I would say we don't have specific roles yet, but we are on the organizing committee.
Okay. Yeah, sounds perfect. All right. So we'll get into it today, and pretty much, the big goal today is just to, hopefully get the Tufts community informed as possible about, the really high amount of work that you guys do that I feel like just goes totally, unnoticed, sometimes by the students, but I feel like, obviously definitely by the university. So this one is for both of you, this question here, and it's just like wanted to get really just to idea of what to start, like what inspired you guys both to really just join the RA program. Julia, I'll let you go first.
The RA program on campus?
Yeah.
I think I was inspired by my sister who did RAing during her time in college, and she really encouraged me to do the RA position. And for a while I thought that I was too introverted, or I couldn't really help people in that way, but then I realized that it's more than just being, an extroverted person on your floor. It's being a personable person and being able to connect with residents and do a lot of things like programming and such that was really rewarding, and being able to help people through their undergrad experience was really nice.
David?
Yeah, this is my first year. I'm a junior, so I applied last year when I was a sophomore. I think the biggest thing was I've worked a lot with students in the past and considering becoming a teacher. So just supporting students has always been something I've enjoyed doing. Obviously, in the past I've done it at the high school level, but doing it at the college level, sort of more or less fairly similar. And so I sort of applied in part for that reason. Obviously, the impetus of being able to know that you have housing security, and you don't have to, start to get housing off campus. I wasn't sure exactly what my plans were, so that was also motivating. But yeah, I think in general, I just had heard that it can be a really rewarding position because you do get to support students a lot through their, as Julie was saying, through their undergraduate career. So.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And so what I was also trying to get a handle on, because I think a lot of people just hear about the various posters that you guys kind of put up in the hall, probably a small fraction of some of the work that you guys do. And so we'll start with pose this one to David first, but obviously Julie could add on. What is the kind of typical day, or if it makes more sense, the kind of week in the life in terms of RA responsibilities that maybe people don't know the full picture of?
Yeah. Before I start, I just wanted to check, are you recording the meeting on a separate device? Because on my end, it doesn't look like it's recording. So I just want to make sure that we...
Oh, yeah, we're recording on a separate device, yeah.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah. All right. So I guess the typical week is probably the best way to look at it. Um, the way I always think about it is sort of like the three sort of main categories of responsibilities. One is like community building. The other is the sort of duty shifts that we have, and the third is sort of like administrative responsibilities. So the first one might include like hosting programmings. We do about one program each month, and then also just sort of being present and being available in the halls for your residents if they need anything, if they have any questions. I know some RAs will put up like on their door whether they're available, and you can knock if you have any questions. So that's sort of one thing, depending on if you are doing an event that week or if you are sort of just being about the hall and just sort of talking with your residents, checking in with them, seeing what they're doing. Um, and then depending on the which duty zone you're in, the campus is sort of carved up into different zones. You might have a duty shift that week depending on the neighborhood. It can be like once every couple of weeks, once every week, things like that. And that basically entails you receive the duty phone, in which you have from 9 p.m. to 9 a.m. on weeknights, and then all day on the weekends. And basically, students can call that if they're locked out. That's the biggest reason why students will call, but also other issues like noise complaints or safety concerns. And so that can you sort of have that all night and all day, and so it could ring at any moment. In which case, then you either get up out of bed or just leave your room and go help the students. So that's another significant responsibility. We sort of man that crisis response line on sort of a rotating shift. And then when you have the duty phone, you do community rounds that evening, where you sort of walk about just the common spaces of the dorms in your duty zone, just to see how things are, make a note of any facilities concerns, if there are any noise issues, or other things like that. And then the last one is like administrative. That's things like health and safety inspections, where we go and check the rooms, make sure that they're sort of up to standard as far as the health and safety rules of Tufts Res Life. And then we things like clothing. Now that we're in that phase, we have sort of closing checklists for all the residents. Once all the residents leave, we're going to be going in and checking the rooms after all the residents have checked out, just to make sure that they're all good and all set for winter break. So there's just sort of lots of here and there sort of administrative tasks. I feel like that covers it, but obviously, Julie, if there are other things I've missed.
Yeah, David pretty much covered it, but yeah, there's a lot of meetings outside of weekly meetings and monthly meetings with the Res Life, trainings during the summer and winter, closing for winter in the summer, making sure the rooms are checked, and also really with that transition into the school year, making sure residents are moving in well, making sure every room is ready for them, and helping the residents move in and prepare the dorms really for opening.
Yeah, do you feel like there's like one specific part of the kind of RA experience that like you feel like students don't know enough about and maybe like should know more about?
Well, I don't know if they should know, but just opening is a lot, and preparing the dorms, especially like over the summer. It's a lot of like making sure everything is in check, making sure the rooms are clean, acceptable, because it's a lot of pressure for like a resident to move in, and especially with their parents, and making sure that they get a good first impression and they feel welcomed, because it really sets out for kind of the outlook for the rest of the year.
Yeah, and that would be also like a pretty high hour commitment, right? In terms of just hours per day spent.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, yeah, obviously, the most important thing, obviously, the reason why you guys are obviously here is to get the union election for the Ultra Union tomorrow. And I want to go to you, David, on this one. What was kind of like the inspiration to start a union drive?
Yeah, I guess on my end personally, um, I've been involved in the Tufts Labor Coalition since my freshman year. So I've been sort of gradually getting more involved over the course of college in labor issues and labor organizing. And so when I joined this job back in the spring, when I signed up for it, when I was thinking about becoming an RA, I was sort of reading up on what it's like to be an RA, and there were some different pieces in the Tufts Daily and Tufts Observer sort of chronicling some of the longstanding issues in the position that people had, particularly during COVID, or particularly during that first academic year of the pandemic. And so I sort of went into it knowing that there were a lot of issues that were going on, and because I had been following it, I had known that, for example, like the Wesleyan University RAs unionized back in the spring of 2022. They won voluntary recognition from their employers, so it was sort of something I knew was going on. This summer, I attended the Labor Notes conference in Chicago, which is it's a sort of nonprofit group that works with unions, and they host this conference for also different kinds of unions in Chicago every couple of years. And I live in Wisconsin, so it was an easy to go down there. And so I sort of learned more about what was going on there at a panel with undergraduate worker organizers, and so I sort of heard more and learned more about what they were doing, and I thought it could be something that would be worth doing here, especially given the longstanding issues in the RA position. So that was sort of what I brought to it. But obviously, I'll pass to Julie.
Yeah, I think for me, I was a summer RA on campus, and I think I was just feeling really frustrated with the conditions with summer training and going into the new year, and I guess the lack of flexibility from Res Life. So I just I sent out a Google form actually to all the RAs asking are they happy with the job, with their compensation and the conditions and training schedule. And I remember the last question a friend told me to just put on would you be interested in forming a collective or a union for our workplace, and majority said yes. And then that's when David reached out to me with all his knowledge about the unions and kind of helped organize and form what we have today.
And yeah, so I think David hinted a little bit at there had been some kind of pretty big other efforts to kind of organize the RAs in the past, and I was wondering what had been the kind of focus of those efforts, and what, in your opinion, made this effort different from those past efforts.
Well, I feel like both of us weren't really involved in the RA workplace at the times for these, but we had heard that people have protested trainings, walked out of trainings, and people were just not invited to apply to be an RA for the following year. And people have formed collectives before to kind of bring forward concerns to Res Life, and were met with kind of comments like our hands are tied and we can't really help you in these sense or make the working conditions better. So I think with this effort now, it felt different because we kind of wanted to have housing secured and make sure everyone's job was safe, and we wanted to do it in a safe way where we felt like our rights were protected as workers, and wanted to kind of create better conditions that were long lasting and not just temporary or get rejected in a sense.
Yeah, that definitely seems like a pretty kind of big change in terms of doing the much more kind of traditional way of, I guess, unionization forming. And I do want to get into some of the demands here. What would you say, David, are some of the biggest driving demands that a lot of people should know about?
So I guess from my conversations with my coworkers, I mean, we don't have anything official right now, just because what we're going to do is, should we be successful tomorrow, we'll elect a bargaining committee from the workplace, and we'll do it democratically. So we want to make sure bring everyone's voices in. So I can't speak, as an individual as to what our specific formal demands will be in bargaining. That would come once we sort of are able to form democratically that bargaining committee. But I can say anecdotally from the conversations I've had with my coworkers, compensation has definitely sort of been top of mind. We receive the housing stipend, or sort of not a stipend, as a credit to our Tufts account that covers the costs of our housing. In the past, there have been times where RAs had housing and a meal plan, my understanding, There are lots of other universities where RAs get some sort of financial compensation, like direct wages, whether it's wages or a stipend. So the exact nature of what we'd be looking for, again, we figure that out down the line together as a collective. But definitely the broad sort of sentiment that I've found in my conversations is that people find that the current level of compensation isn't sort of fair given the work that we do. So I know that will be a big sticking point. I know there have been some other like things with like logistics and training. So people often finding that the 2 weeks of training, 2 weeks of training, which is unpaid, in the beginning of the semester, the two weeks in August, is longer than perhaps it needs to be, and so there's been conversations about what changes we might be able to request to be made to that. In the past years, you could decide whether to stay for winter closing or stay for spring closing. And this time around, they've changed that to everyone stays for both winter and spring closing. And so now I know that was a big point of contention. And so they did that unilaterally, obviously, because we weren't unionized. But if we do have a union, we'll be able to negotiate over that change. And I know that was a point of contention. So I imagine that is something that will come up. Those are the biggest sort of issues that I've found just in my conversations with other folks. But I don't know, Julie, if you have others that you found.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. And I think just David was kind of hinting to this, but just like having a say over our contract and creating a contract that everyone's kind of happy with and has to stay in.
Yeah. I think that definitely makes a lot of sense there. And I do want to kind of get into the kind of I guess the campaigning aspect of this. And what would you say was kind of the most effective way? Was it largely through kind of the Google Forms, or how were you kind of able to really get the message out to all of the, I believe it's like 122 RAs? Is that correct?
About 140.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So how did we get the message out?
Yeah. Send that to Julie. Yeah.
Yeah, it was mostly through, I guess, email. We always have a joke that Res Life made a mistake by sending an email to all the RAs and not really BCCing everyone. So we got everyone's email through that.
Oh.
It was really through email. And during the 2 weeks of training, it's only all 140 of us on campus. So we're able to we go to breakfast together, lunch. And so we're always together, and I was able to pass along the word of what's going on for our first initial meeting, just to propose the idea. And from then on, people were really excited. So they stayed kind of engaged. And we kind of just kept communicating through email and having meetings every week and such.
Yeah, we did. It was a lot of one-on-one conversations, which became sort of tougher during the school year. But as Julie mentioned, during training, we were able to hold a unit-wide meeting. About half of the unit came to that meeting. So we had pretty exciting attendance, and that's sort of when it started, when people really start to when we share that initial information about what this could look like, and then later on in the year, it was it's tough because we're sort of geographically dispersed as a workplace, but some of it was RAs speaking individually, to friends. If they already had a relationship with a certain RA, they could talk about, hey, is this something that you would be interested in supporting? We did door-to-door canvassing. We would knock on room doors of RAs to try to have those conversations to talk about unionization. We also had pamphlets that we would sometimes slip under doors that just had information about what this could look like, and what the steps were. So those are also some of those other tactics that we were using just to sort of work on confirming that there was enough support in the workplace to move forward.
Yeah, and for when you kind of go into this union election tomorrow, of course you got the kind of failed unfortunately with the university for the the voluntary recognition. That is kind of a key step. I was wondering, a big thing was obviously dealing with the university. I'm sure for you guys, how has that been, and how how was the process, and of course, of trying to get voluntary recognition, which is the idea that the university is just able to recognize you right away, and you don't need to go to the government, the NLRB, and do an official election like you guys are doing on Wednesday. Yes, that to Julie.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? Like, what was the...
Just what was the how has it been like dealing with the university and dealing with the kind of process to attempt to gain voluntary recognition?
Well, I think with dealing with the university, I don't know what to say. I think it was like it took like months of planning to think about our strategy of like launching our campaign and going public in a sense, and how we're going to keep that quiet, because we didn't necessarily want the university to get kind of a whiff of what we were doing to kind of stop us in our tracks up until like we went public for voluntary recognition. And then in that week of going public, we kind of had like an escalation plans of like getting the word out, putting out posters on campus, start launching our social media, and really putting pressure on administration by going to like Medford and Somerville city council meetings and having our resolution read and getting it read in TCU Senate. And in my eyes, I kind of see the university denying us recognition. I feel like we just offer them the chance to do some good and kind of set an example of, great like workplace practice and respect for their workers by voluntarily recognizing us. Unfortunately, they didn't. And in their response, they said that they kind of wanted a democratic process to take place and for everyone to vote. And for this, it's kind of confusing in the sense of like, we don't know what their ulterior motives are, because they kind of made this whole website on Res Life about the union and election, and there's some anti-union rhetoric in there. However, they are letting the election go smoothly, and they didn't really contest that too much. And luckily, we're going to have the election tomorrow, and hopefully we win that, and we'll be able to go to the bargaining table pretty quickly, and hopefully the process for bargaining, like, they're not, kind of negative in any way, or kind of, I guess, not working well with us. Hopefully it all goes well, and like they bargain in good faith and all that. But yeah, so far it's been kind of, I wouldn't say it's exactly been smooth sailing, but I'm thankful for the process that we've had, and like that we're here now and everything's going well. I don't know if David has anything else to add to that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I feel similarly. Yeah, I mean, it was obviously disappointing when they did decline to volunteer. They recognized, we had, I think, a pretty, strong show of support. As Julie said, we had the TCU Senate. We presented a resolution to them, and they passed it almost unanimously. And we had the Somerville City Council and the Medford City Council also unanimously passed resolutions in support of us, calling on Tufts to voluntarily recognize. We had the community support petition, had signatures from over 1,000 students, did a rally. So I think we showed a big, strong show of support. And so I think it was an opportunity for Tufts to, as Julie said, do the right thing. They declined, obviously. And so, obviously that was disappointing. But that being said, as Julie said, they didn't try to delay the election, didn't try to contest the election. And so we are grateful for, the fact that they have been able to, work with us in good faith, and that they appear to have meant what they said when they said that they wanted, to go through the democratic process. Because there are schools that have tried to delay or contest the election for their RAs on all sorts of different grounds, and employers often will try to figure out ways to try to push off the election. But we have ours less than a month after we filed, which is, we feel very lucky for. And so we are thankful for the university's conduct in that respect. And as Julie said, just hope that it will continue. Should we be successful in the election, we hope that that sort of working relationship will continue into bargaining.
Yeah, and when I've been telling people for the last few days around campus, I'm actually talking to the two organizers of the RA Union on my podcast. A big kind of reaction of the like, oh, that's nice. The normal is a lot of people just kind of saying, oh, don't they get paid already? In the free room and board. And it isn't that enough? So, how would you guys? Do you think yeah, how would you guys essentially like respond to that?
Well, I would say with the free room, it's a credit to our account that, just applies to getting the room for free. And I would say with like everything else that goes on in I think college individual's life, like getting food, I think is a big thing.
Yeah.
A lot of us live in freshman dorms and there's only one communal kitchen serving, over 100 residents. So it's not really realistic that we can otherwise cook for ourselves or buy food because we're not getting compensated from our one job. And I think the bare minimum would be like a meal plan so that we can also like, because we're being subjected to living in these dorms that freshmen otherwise get are forced to get unlimited meal plans otherwise. So I think it would be helpful to have meal plan coverage. I think for a lot of RAs, a lot of us work additional jobs just to make ends meet, and that means working other hours outside of our RA role just to make money to pay for either our meal plan or just the other expenses like textbooks and other stuff of being a student. And I think sometimes, like, I look at my week and I think it's kind of ridiculous that I'm working so many jobs. Like, I'm working like 3 jobs just to make ends meet when I feel like a job that I'm doing so much work towards, like the RA role, should be supporting me more. So that's what I would say to that. And I think also a lot of other universities get compensated otherwise with their meal plan or compensation otherwise. So it's kind of an example from other universities that I think is a standard for the RA role.
Yeah, I think the fact that there's like so little understanding of what goes on with other universities and kind of what the standards are among just like the general student body can really allow the university kind of unfortunately pull the standards in one way or the other. Yeah, this one I guess would be for David. The last question here, which do you guys, and Julia also welcome to add on, obviously. Which does you view as more challenging? Winning contract with Tufts, which would obviously come after the Wednesday NLRB election, or just winning the election on Wednesday?
Yeah, I think, and I guess before I answer that, I think one thing to add on to the last point is obviously there is that skepticism about our compensation. I think it is also important that we recognize that the unionization compensation is just one component. There are all sorts of other reasons to unionize, as we've gone over in the past, like other logistical reasons, or just wanting to have a say over our contract. And so, I personally believe all workers, deserve a union and should be able to have a say over their job. And so that's what this provides us. It's not all about compensation. Compensation is just one aspect of it. But I think there are a lot of other just inherent justifications for employees unionizing, just to have that basic say over their jobs. But I guess, sorry, to answer the question though, I think the process of bargaining with Tufts, I think, will be fairly could be pretty difficult depending on how they act and how they respond. If they are good about scheduling meetings with us, are able to bargain in good faith, not try to hold things up, or not just try to sort of stonewall us. Obviously it could get dragged out. We're hoping that we can do it as swiftly as possible, and it's sort of just we don't necessarily know what Tufts' conduct will be in that regard. Again, we've been pleasantly surprised by their conduct over the past month with regard to the NLRB filing and the election. That being said, I guess I would, if I had to choose one, I would probably say that the bargaining will probably be a bit more of a challenge, just because we were able to build a fairly strong show of support. Getting 85% cards signed, 85% of the unit that we know was supportive of unionization, wanted to unionize so that we could have this collective voice over our jobs. And so obviously those numbers can change. We'll see if those numbers change on Wednesday. Everyone will make their own decision. But personally, I'm optimistic just based on the level of support that we've had. And again, obviously we'll see. Obviously don't want to jinx it or anything like that. But I think that over the course of this process, it hasn't been too much a matter of convincing. Like some workplaces, especially in some like different regions, like I know like this, for example, like the South in the United States is generally culturally much more anti-union. We're in a much more union-friendly area. It's a university campus, so generally people more left-leaning or liberal, so more sort of amenable to the idea. of unions. And so I think that, and also with the longstanding issues in the role, I think that, people have been looking for an opportunity for a while to try to make positive changes in the RA position. So I think that we were in a sort of fortunate situation there, or we're sort of in an area that has more of a union presence. We're also benefiting from the sort of news recently I just saw the national news of, the Starbucks union effort, the Amazon union effort. Like their unions are increasingly in the news all the time now. And I think we're sort of in a cultural moment where people are realizing how important unions are and how important it is that workers have a say over their jobs. So I think that helps us a lot in terms of sort of building that majority and getting, having a supermajority of the workplace signed on. Just, people sort of recognizing how important it is for workers to have a say over their jobs and how beneficial it can be to have a union. So I think that's put us in a strong position. So yeah, I guess I'd probably have to say that just depending on how Tufts acts, it could be that bargaining is harder than this first phase, but I guess we'll have to see.
And then you get the OPEIU, which that's the right acronym. It was the union that you guys are for office and professional workers that you guys have associated with, which I believe is also going to be playing the biggest role in the contract negotiations. Is that correct?
Yeah, they'll be they'll be supporting us. That's part of the reason why we affiliated with them. It's the same union that the Wesleyan RA is affiliated with, and so they'll be giving us that support. They obviously have tons of experience with bargaining. They know how this works. So we'll be able to have their support, have access to sort of their legal resources. That's sort of the benefit of affiliating with a larger existing union. That being said, as I mentioned earlier, the process will be to democratically elect a bargaining committee from the workplace. So it'll be a democratic process throughout, and that's something the university has done a lot, sort of saying that OPIU is this like third party that's coming in, but that's not the case. Our union will be governed and run democratically by the members, by the RAs, and we'll make our decisions on what to bargain for and what demands to make based on those sort of will of the workplace. Sorry, I know I talked for a while.
Oh, yeah, no problem.
Other thoughts, yeah.
Send the last question over to Julia, and that being, what can students who may want to support the union do to help out?
I think the biggest thing right now is just support, and we're past the phase of asking the university for recognition and putting pressure on them. But if we just have support from fellow peers on campus, that's much appreciated. And I think getting the word out that the election is tomorrow and only RAs are eligible to vote, and making sure if you have any RA friends that they have voting plans for Wednesday. The polls are open from 12 to 3. And we hope that everyone just takes a part of the process and goes out to vote, and hopefully we have a good outcome from the election.
Yeah, the two RAs, I know one of them right here in my own building have definitely made plans and are definitely getting out there. So thank you very much, guys. They got the Wednesday election in the Aidekman Alumni Lounge, and obviously if you want to follow, it's for any information. It really is a great source of information. I saw you guys did a post breaking down the university's website and kind of rebutting some of the maybe anti-union talking points that they had to say. So if you want to kind of get a great kind of perspective on it, the Tufts RA Union Instagram account is definitely a place I would recommend. Guys, thank you so much for joining us, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much for listening. And that was David Whittingham and Julia Francois of the Tufts RA Union. Obviously, as I said, you can follow them at the Instagram page at Tufts RA Union. Their election will be tomorrow. Thank you so much for listening to the Tuesday episode of Newsflash. We'll be back on Thursday with our regularly scheduled kind of broader national political coverage and global political coverage that we normally do. But stay tuned for future episodes on Tufts News as well.